Milton Hershey, Hershey's chocolate creator. Life on the farm. Who doesn't love chocolate? It is delicious in cookies, on ice cream, or by itself. Yet just 100 years ago, few Americans even knew what this tempting treat tasted like. Milton Hershey changed everything when he created the Hershey bar. For the first time, delicious sweet chocolate was available to anyone who wanted it. Milton Snavely Hershey was born on September 13th, 1857. His life began on a farm called the Homestead. It was near Hawkersville, Pennsylvania. His parents were Henry and Veronica Fanny Hershey. Milton had a younger sister named Serena. Both Henry and Fanny had grown up in Mennonite families. Fanny embraced that lifestyle. She valued hard work and determination. Still, the family never had much money. Henry worked on the farm during Milton's early days, but he changed jobs often. Whenever Henry got a new job, the family had to move. In 1866, the family settled on a farm near Lancaster, Pennsylvania, but life soon became more difficult than ever. The next year, Serena died. This loss upset Milton's parents greatly. Fanny blamed Henry for their troubles. Eventually, she told him to leave. Off to work. Milton's troubled family life and constant moving made it difficult for him to become educated. He first attended Derry Church School. By the time he was 13, he had attended 6 other schools. In 1870, Milton quit school. He had only a 4th grade education. In those days, many children left school early to work. Like them, Milton had to help support his family. The next year, Milton was apprenticed to a printer named Sam Ernest. Unfortunately, Milton's lack of reading skills made this job difficult. He was also clumsy. After just 3 months, Ernest lost patience with Milton and let him go. In 1872, Milton's mother apprenticed him to Joseph R. Royer. Royer owned Royer's ice cream parlor and garden in Lancaster. His shop also sold candy. Royer taught Milton how to make many kinds of candy. Finally, Milton had a job he really liked. By the time he was 18, Milton had learned much from Royer. In fact, Milton felt ready to open his own candy store. However, he did not have enough money to do this, so Milton borrowed $150 from his mother's family. He then opened a taffy shop in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Milton was proud to be running his own business. Candyman. Milton's father heard of his son's start in the candy business. Henry was always full of business ideas, so he traveled to Philadelphia to share them with Milton. Henry's advice was not good. Milton worked hard, but he did not make much money. After 6 years in business, Milton's candy shop failed. Milton felt ashamed, so in 1882 he moved away to Denver, Colorado. There, he got a great job with a candy maker. The candy maker taught Milton how to make caramels. At the time, most caramels contained paraffin. Yet, in Denver, Milton learned of a secret ingredient that made his caramels delicious. Fresh milk instead of paraffin made the candies taste wonderful. They stayed fresh longer, too. Armed with his knowledge, Milton moved to Chicago, Illinois. He started a business there making caramel candies, but he didn't stay for long. In 1883, Milton moved to New York City, New York. During the day, he worked for a candy maker. At night, he made his own caramels, but sales were slow. In 1886, he moved back to Lancaster to start over one more time. Caramel King. Back in Pennsylvania, Hershey started the Lancaster Caramel Company. One day in 1887, an Englishman visited the town. He tasted some of Hershey's caramels and thought they were delicious. The man offered to introduce Hershey's caramels to people in London, England. There was just one problem. Hershey would have to produce more caramels than ever. To do this, Hershey needed to expand his factory. So he went to the bank and got a loan from Frank Brenman. Then, Hershey went to work making caramels. But when his loan came due, Hershey had not yet finished filling orders for London. In fact, he needed even more money to get the job done. Hershey wanted Brenman to see how his loan was invested, so he invited the banker to visit the factory. Brenman liked what he saw there and believed Hershey could be successful, so Brenman lent Hershey some of his own money. The money allowed Hershey to fill his orders in time. As soon as the Englishman paid him, Hershey rushed to the bank and paid off his debts. People liked Hershey's caramels, so his sales increased By the 1890s, Hershey had finally achieved success as a candy maker. He became one of Lancaster's most important citizens. Chocolate dreams. Most Americans living during the late 1800s had never heard of chocolate. The first time Hershey saw chocolate being made was in 1893 at the World's Columbian Exposition. This gathering of exhibits was held in Chicago, Illinois. One exhibit displayed some special machines from Germany. They were used to make chocolate. When Hershey tasted what the chocolate making machines had created, he felt inspired. He wanted to start a new business making chocolate. In the past, chocolate had been expensive to make, so only wealthy people had been able to buy it. But Hershey wanted to make chocolate a treat that everyone could afford to enjoy. Hershey bought the German chocolate equipment and put it in his caramel factory in Lancaster. There, Hershey experimented until he found the right method for making his chocolate. He began using the chocolate to coat his caramels. He also produced cocoa powder and unsweetened baking chocolate. Hershey was on his way to great success. Love at last. In 1894, Hershey started the Hershey Chocolate Company. The company made fancy chocolates that came in many different shapes. Hershey's made his first chocolate sale in April of 1895. Even though Hershey kept busy with work, he was often lonely. That changed in 1897. While traveling in New York, Hershey met Catherine Kitty Sweeney at a sweets shop. Kitty worked at the ribbon counter at Altman Department Store in New York City. On Sundays, Hershey took the train from Pennsylvania to New York to visit Kitty. The two quickly fell in love. Then, on May 25, 1898, they married. The Hersheys loved spending time together. They traveled a lot and often went to the theater. They also gave many parties and enjoyed visiting with their friends. Hershey had never been happier. Sweet success. Meanwhile, Hershey wanted to figure out how to make milk chocolate. This treat was a guarded secret in Europe, so there were no recipes to follow. Hershey moved his chocolate equipment to the farm where he had been born. There, at the homestead, he could work in secret. Hershey spent years working on his recipe. Eventually, his hard work and countless attempts paid off. Hershey was the first American to develop a milk chocolate formula. In 1900, Hershey introduced the milk chocolate Hershey bar. This treat only cost consumers 5 cents. At first, the chocolate spoiled quickly, so the bars were only sold in Lancaster. Eventually, Hershey's company perfected its milk chocolate formula. Soon, Hershey's bars were sold all around the country. Hershey's chocolate business grew so successful that he needed to expand his operation, so Hershey began looking for a new factory location. He thought it would be best to be close to Pennsylvania dairy farms. That would make it easier to get all the milk he needed for his chocolate. Hershey realized he was more interested in chocolate than in caramel, so in August 1900 he sold the Lancaster Caramel Company for $1 million. That was a huge amount of money in those days. Hershey's would soon invest it all into building his chocolate empire. In 1902, Hershey bought 1,200 acres of land near the homestead in Pennsylvania countryside. He planned to build a new chocolate factory there. The next year, construction began. The new factory was completed in 1905. Around the factory, Hershey constructed a town called Hershey. On a hill above the chocolate factory, he built his new home. The mansion was called High Point. In those days, many factory owners built towns for their workers, but those towns were usually plain and not much fun to live in. Hershey's town was different. He provided his workers with nice homes. He also built excellent schools for their children. Hershey believed workers did their job better if they were treated fairly and lived comfortably. He wanted his employees to be happy and eager to work, so everything they needed was available in the town. There were churches, stores, a post office, and a bank. The town also had plenty of places to have fun. These included parks, golf courses, and a zoo. A trolley system moved people about town. In 1907, Hershey built an amusement park for his workers. It was called Hershey Park. It was renamed Hershey Park in 1971. Hershey's School. The Hersheys loved children, so they decided to help those in need. On November 15, 1909, Hershey established the Hershey Industrial School. He invited orphan boys to attend the school. Hershey knew what it was like to grow up with very little. He wanted to help these boys have a good life. The next year, the school enrolled its first 4 boys. They began to live and attend classes in the homestead. Hershey's Industrial School students were given nice clothes to wear and good food to eat. All the boys learned to read, write, do mathematics, and run the farm. They also learned a useful trade which helped them find work when they left school, and when they graduated, each boy received $100. The Hersheys were happy to help the boys. They never had any biological children, so Hershey said he decided to make the orphan boys of the United States his heirs. In 1910, Mrs. Hershey became ill with a nerve disease. She could no longer walk, and she had trouble breathing. Hershey took good care of his wife, and he brought her flowers every day. Sadly, Mrs. Hershey's health grew worse. On March 23, 1915, she died. After his wife's death, Hershey began spending a lot of time away from home. He was drawn to Cuba's warm weather. In addition, he knew Cuba's plantations could provide his business with a very important ingredient. Chocolate could not be made without sugar. Until that time, Hershey had imported his sugar from Europe. Yet, when World War I began, it became more difficult to get a full supply. So in 1960, Hershey purchased 65,000 acres of Cuban sugarcane fields. He also opened a sugar refinery there. Hershey wanted his Cuban workers to be just as happy as his Pennsylvania workers were, so he built them a town called Central Hershey. It had nice homes, parks, and schools. In 1925, Hershey opened the Hershey Agricultural School for orphaned boys. At his height, Hershey's Cuban operation employed nearly 4,000 people. His sugar refinery was the largest on the island at the time. Hershey's contributions benefited the local economy. For this, the Cuban government granted him the Grand Cross of National Order in 1933. It is the highest honor a foreigner can earn from Cuba. After the war, sugar was once again available in the United States, yet Hershey's Cuban operation continued for several years. Then, in 1946, it was sold to the Cuban Atlantic Sugar Company. Through his business in Pennsylvania and Cuba, Hershey became a very wealthy man. He believed it was important to use the wealth to help others, so as early as 1905, Hershey established the Hershey Trust Company. This group manages the funds for Hershey's many charitable efforts. In 1918, Hershey put the Hershey Trust Company in charge of $60 million. This was almost his entire fortune. All the money would benefit the Hershey Industrial School. Today, that fund is worth more than $6 billion. Hershey School was renamed the Milton Hershey School in 1951. Today, it offers education to about 1,800 boys and girls each year. The school provides these students with important opportunities. Many graduates go on to enjoy successful careers. During the Great Depression, Hershey wanted to give jobs to people in need, so he paid workers to build the Hotel Hershey. This luxury hotel opened on May 26, 1933. Workers also built a sports stadium. With these additions, the town of Hershey became a popular travel destination. In 1935, Hershey started the M.S. Hershey Foundation. Today, the foundation supports educational and cultural opportunities for people in the Hershey area. Its sites include the Hershey Gardens, the Hershey Theater, and the Hershey Story Museum. Hershey's chocolate sales continued to grow each year. During World War II, Hershey invented a survival chocolate bar for soldiers. It was called the Ration D bar. By the end of the war, more than 1 billion were produced. On October 13, 1945, Milton Hershey died in the Hershey Hospital. Today, Hershey's business lives on. The company was renamed Hershey Foods Corporation in 1968, but today it is called the Hershey Company. It manufactures many chocolates, candies, and other foods. These products are exported to more than 90 companies. The company's success has allowed Hershey's Trust to continue enriching the company. In 1963, the trust gave land and $50 million to Pennsylvania University's College of Medicine. The college started a hospital called Milton S. Hershey Medical Center. It is a leading healthcare facility that helps thousands of people each year. Milton Hershey was a poor boy, but he worked hard to be successful. Then he used his wealth to help others. Today he is known all over the world for his delicious candy and for all he did to make life better for other people.